Welcome to the third video about what's new in the Identity Manager in version 8.2. And we continue with talking about the new Standard Web Portal. In this part of the series, we will show you the new Standard Web Front and of course as well the Operations Portal. Two questions at least we should answer first, and these are questions from the field. The first question was, what will happen with the web designer and all the web designer related front ends? And the answer is, for the next 2 or 3 years, web designer will continue. Of course, we will not spend too much more work into the web designer and the web designer configuration, but at least the web designer as it is with smaller changes will continue for the next 2 or 3 years at least. Then there will be a time when we completely switch from the web designer technology to the Angular technology. That means that these web designer capabilities will disappear, but this will happen in 2 to 3 years, of course. In the meantime, both technologies will live in parallel. That means we will ship the Angular front and we will ship the web designer front. As you saw in the first 2 videos, new features will be more and more implemented into the Angular front, so that step by step the new functionality will be mostly and mainly available in the Angular front. In the web designer front ends, the one or the other feature will be integrated as well, but at the end only a few of them. Second question. For people using Identity Manager on demand, which front ends will be available? Of course, both of them. Since the 1st January 2022, that means beginning of this year, we have both front ends available. That means 8.2 is installed in our on-demand labs and both front ends are available. That means the API server in the same way than the web designer front ends. And that will be as well continue until we will remove web designer completely from the product. And the very last question, which is not really part of this series, but as I have mentioned before, we will create another video series around the Angular web development. The question I want to answer here is as well, what exactly is the difference between the API server, which is a REST-based service, and the application server, which is another REST-based service as well. And to answer that, please follow me to the screen. As you easily can see on the screen, we have 2 Swagger fronts open. As you know, Swagger fronts are documentation of API servers. On the very left-hand side, you see the application server API documentation. On the very right-hand side, you see the API server documentation. And if you look at, I like to say, the different calls that are displayed there, then you will easily see that left-hand side always the word table, maybe sometimes method, column, entity exists. And that is the hint that this API is based on the Identity Manager database model. Yes, you have to know something about the data structure, where data in the Identity Manager gets stored to. If you don't know about the data structure, it is hard to use this REST service. And this is exactly the reason why we developed the API server. That means this additional REST service, right-hand side. As you can see, there is nowhere the dependence to this data storage available. And it should be possible, even for people who don't know how a database of the Identity Manager looks like and the database structure looks like, that these people are as well able to use such an API to create web fronts on the basis of this. And with that, at least we have the database, which is the lower data storage level. On top of the database, we have the Identity Manager API, which is in .NET written API with classes and such. And on top of that, we have the REST service application server, left-hand side on the screen. This makes the API of the Identity Manager available as a REST service. And on top of this application server, there is the API server, and the API server, it's an abstraction layer to the first REST service, which just disconnects the API from the database storage model. And that's the reason why this exists. From that perspective, the API server is level 4 and the database, of course, is level 1. And with that, we can directly jump into the new front ends which our API server provides. What you can easily see on the screen is the API server, and the last thing we saw seconds before was the API documentation. That was the Swagger front that was showing us how that REST service underneath looks like. Additionally to this documentation exists for other portals. From the left to the right there is the Standard Web Portal new version, that is the Angular based new Standard Web Portal. That is what we will have a look first. Then we have a password reset portal, that is another password reset portal, we will have a look at that as well. There is the new Operation Support Web. Operation Support Web exists since version I think 8.0 or such, but in this case it is a completely reviewed version with a lot of new features. We will have a look at these as well. Last but not least, there's the administration portal, and the administration portal is the configuration of the API server and of course of some of these API server based front ends as well. Let's start with the web portal. Therefore, I just opened the web portal. And one of the first big changes is that you have now 3 boxes where you can enter your user credentials, starting with the first box here, which is Authentication. And if I open Authentication, then you will see you can select from a variety of different authentication modules. Remember, in the Identity Manager, there are many ways to sign in based on different rules. These rules are named authentication modules. There are specific videos on YouTube talking about these authentication modules as well. But what you can now do in difference to before is that you can now select one of these modules. For example, I can decide I want to sign in employee role-based. And doing so, I can then enter here an employee. If I want to sign in with my system user, for example, then I can search for the system user, which is not available for that front end, as you can see. And with that, I can as well sign in, but then I have to activate this authentication module here for the Standard Web front first. I keep the employee role-based authentication model, and now I have to enter an employee. And of course the password. And I'm in. And all what I can see is the maximum of features available in the new Standard Web Portal. The reason for is I was signed in with my user Herwig Abele, and on that specific machine, this is something like a super user. That means a person that has nearly every permission to work with. Okay, let's start. First of all, new in the new Standard Web Front, of course, the look and feel. You will see it many times when I show you the one or the other different feature. And I like to start with the right upper. In the past, there was a lot of functionality in the right upper for developers, for the profile and such. It's all clean. It's all with less functionality. You know, front ends gets in the meantime built in a way that it should be as simple as possible. And if you click on that name of Mr. Abele, then you see at least 3 functions. There is the profile, there is the address book we will have a look at, and I can log off, of course. Let's start with the profile. If I just select the profile, then I see my own profile. So that means I'm able partially to change my values. Not all of them. For example, the last name can't be changed, but I can, for example, add middle names if I like to. I can as well add a contact address and create and select my gender and such. I cannot change the manager, as we can see, because that is an organizational decision, and I'm not allowed to do that as user, and so on. And all of that can be done here. Once that is saved, it will automatically take place, and I can step to the next tab. This is a new tab, as you can easily see there. I can talk about my email notifications. These are all the emails I will get, and I can as well deactivate them to get rid of spam in my inbox. But of course, Identity Manager never sends out spam, and so I would suggest just to let it checked. Password reset. I can add my password reset questions. This is a new feature as well. I can create as many password questions as I like to. What's your favorite color? It's one of them. I have already configured. I can open that. I can see my answer or edit my answer, for example. Yeah, as you easily can see, it is not possible to see these secrets. I have to enter the secrets again. So, for example, I can enter my favorite color into that specific field. And then I'm good. I can as well add other password questions. So, for example, create another one and can as well store here an answer. And now I have 2 of them, and so on. That is the way how to create and answer my password questions. I can, with the next tab, talk about my report subscriptions. And as you can easily see, there's just one report, Herwig with permissions, and that is here already scheduled. I can have a look at these report subscriptions, of course, and can see it is a PDF report that gets used. There is, as you can see, a monthly schedule assigned to that specific report, and we can talk about such report subscriptions a little bit later. That is my new profile I can work with. And if I click back to the menu we started, then you see there is an additional thing, and that is the new address book. And looking into that address book, then you can easily see it is what we called in the past a telephone table or such. It is the address book that shows me all of the different addresses or people within the Identity Manager. What I can do here, first I can start to search for. If I search for my last name, there is then my entry available, of course. I can as well search for others, and I might see other people as well. I can as well filter all of these things. So if I just get rid of that specific filter and click the filter icon here, then I can use predefined filters. There's, for example, activated identities or deactivated identities. I can search for identities without managers and such. This is at the end a predefined filter could be used additionally to the search function we saw before. If I then hit on the 3 dots there, then I can start with grouping. For example, I can group with identities. And easily to see, there are now the primary identities and other identities. At the end, as you can see, these are predefined groups. So in this version of the front end, it is not possible just to build your own grouping if you like to. Both the filters and the groups, of course, is something that was just started. Even with the table names, as you can see, in old front ends, we had the chance that per column it was possible to create filters and groups. This will be possible in the future as well, but that is something maybe will be developed with the first service pack. Nevertheless, on the button, as you can see, the pages, we have 1,073 employees in the system, and we can here just enter the amount of entries of the list, and we can as well toggle from one page to the next page and back. This is at the end the new address book, and the last thing it's log off and how that works, I think it's pretty clear. Last but not least, let's talk about the question button here. The question button here just gives me the chance to see the About page. As you see on the About page, there is the Identity Manager 8.2. There might be some legal notices if you are interested in. There are contact addresses. It's exactly the same you might have seen in the installer of the Identity Manager as well. If we close that, we can then select from that menu the main important part, and that's the documentation, and that links me directly to the HTML-based documentation of the Identity Manager. We'll talk about that briefly again, but with the Identity Manager 8.2, first time a complete new documentation is shipped, which is now HTML-based. Easy to search and easy to see, easy to use them without the web if you like to, because it is a local installed documentation. And of course, as well for the web fronts, this could be very helpful. Back to the front end, let's talk about some of the new features of the portal. A really nice new feature in the Identity Manager 8.2 web portal is that you can just edit IT shops. That is a functionality we missed since years, so that people who are working more administratively but from the business are able to configure their IT shop structure so that other people can request for specific products. To do so, I can just step to the Setup menu here. In the Setup menu, you can see a new menu item that is called Shops. And if I just check the Shops entry, then I get my IT shops. As you can see, there is the identity and access lifecycle. This is the out-of-the-box existing shop. And you can as well see the VIP shop. That is a shop that is only available in that specific system. To change now something, for example, I can just click on the VIP shop and the shop gets already open. I can see details of the shop, I can see shelves, and I can see access, which means I can manage the shelves and I can manage the access, which are the people at least allowed to get something from that specific shop. In my specific case, I will just add a shelf. Therefore, I select shelves, and then you can see there's a line manager approval shelf. And just following that specific scenario, I will now add another shelf. Therefore, I create a shelf and call it, for example, line manager and target system administrator approval. That is then something like where the line manager has to approve first, and then the target system manager says this is okay from a compliance perspective, for example, because the first one says it is okay from a business perspective. The second one says it is okay from a technical and security perspective. Then I can describe that if I like to, but at the end, what I want to do is I want to assign a specific approval policy, and I can look into the approval policies. As you can see, there is one that is line manager, target system manager. This is predefined, of course. It is a policy that is not out of the box available, but you can create policies like always in the manager. And once I have selected this, I can just say apply, and then I have this policy assigned. With create, I do have then another shelf, and with cancel, I can close that. As you can see, two shelves available now, both with different policies, and now I can assign products if I like to. To assign such products, I can just select the shelf I already have created, and then I can just click on the Product tab. On the Product tab, I can then assign products. And therefore, I have first to select the type of products I want to assign. And because I know I have hundreds of Active Directory groups available, I will now say Active Directory groups should be what I want to assign. And then you can see all my Active Directory groups, and on many pages, as you can see, I will just extend a little bit the amount of entries per page. These are hundreds, and then you see a lot of different lists. I will just take one. It makes now directly sense which one, but I will, for example, take the distribution list for marketing. And once that is done and it's applied, then you can see that this specific item can now be requested by that specific shop now using this new shelf I've already created. With that, I can then say step out of that specific shelf and out of that specific shop. And that's more or less the complete functionality. We can talk about it. It is a small and tiny tool to edit my IT shop. One last thing you can do with shops is to manage the access of people. And therefore I just step into my VIP shop again, and this time I select the Access tab. And with the Access tab, I see a couple of members. These members are assigned by dynamical role, of course. You can't change dynamic roles here in this tool, not in that version, maybe in the future. But what you can do is you can just exclude people which are dynamically assigned. For example, there are a couple of people, and if you want to exclude them, you can directly step to excluded members, and then you can see the excluded people here. To get someone excluded, not a problem at all. Back to the assigned members, just select one of these. And then you can easily say remove, and with that and a reason, which is not the best reason, of course, then you can at the end exclude that specific person. You will see them then as well here on the Exclude tab. The main important part of that is the following. In version 8.2, it is first time possible to define exclusion lists for automatically assigned people and of course to add people additionally to a rule, to a specific role. And that means at the end that a dynamical role creates the basis, and with manual action you can add or delete people from that created basis. And that's the whole IT shop functionality. Let's step to the next feature. As well, renewed and implemented is the request functionality of the standard web portal. And if I step into the new request functionality, then I will find a big list of products. In my demo environment, as you easily can see, 20 of 185 items. Of course, I am able here just to extend the amount of entries to 100. And with that, I have only 2 pages, of course. But honestly, the main problem here is that 185 requestable items is more or less a very small customer. The more huge customers does have thousands of items they can request, and to find something here in that specific overview is nearly impossible. And because of that, there are some features implemented that can help. First of all, there is the capability to switch from that item view here to a list view. And in the list view, then you can see all of these entries here as a specific list entry, which is a little bit better from an overview perspective, but less good. Because of that, developers decided just to create that search bar here and allow to search for something. For example, I can search for distribution lists, and then I will start to see distribution lists. But one problem here exists, and that is, of course, that I have to know what to enter into that search box. And let me say it that way, for a person who was not creating that environment, like I am the creator of this environment, it is sometimes hard to know which search terms I have to enter in this specific box to get the right result. And because of that, in the old world, there was categories, and these categories was more or less like boxes where I was able to look into. And these boxes exist as well, but they are moved out of the first screen. Maybe they will return, nobody knows. But at the end, what I have to do is I have to show here products from a service category, and that is a button. If I click on that, then I will see my service category here to the right, and there I'm able then to open these different boxes and look into the boxes, for example the distribution groups box, like it was before. You can easily see then here these specific boxes, but be careful, if you've started with such, you will see that here as a specific selection. With this category selection, you can then work. For example, you can add a search mask just to specify a little bit better, or you can, as well as you can see it here, include the child categories as long as they exist. And of course, you can get rid of that complete category selection. Therefore, you have just to X that out. With that, the complete categorizing functionality is discussed. I'm not quite sure if that will be the same in 1 or 2 further versions, but at the end, this is how it is currently implemented. The last very nice feature I want to show you is for requests, and that is the new request per peer group. Therefore, I have to go to my requests again, start a new request. And I was just jumping to another user. That is what you can see here in the right upper. The reason is I need a peer group. Peer group are people who are in my organizational structure located or reporting to the same line manager. That is the standard configuration. And if I want to request something from my peer group, then I can just add on the 3 dots there. I can show products, other identities requested. I get exactly only products seen which are requested from my teammates or people reporting to my line manager. And that is what I can then see. And depending on what my colleagues have requested, I'm now able as well to request here something and add it to my cart. With that, the request features are discussed, and we can step to the next feature. Two more brand new features to discuss, and the first of them is the Data Explorer. Since we have version 8.2, it is possible to browse our data more or less like in the manager. And therefore I have to go to the topic Data Administration there. And in that specific menu, there is a Data Explorer. If I click on that specific Data Explorer, then I can see all my identities, user accounts, system entitlements, departments, locations, cost centers, business roles, system roles, all stuff I am responsible for. Honestly, with that account, you can see in the meantime, I'm back as Herwig Abele. I have nearly everything what I can edit. The reason for is that this guy is a super user and sees everything, but officially I can only see my belongings, of course. And again, I can filter them, I can group them like it was before. For example, if I'm interested to browse my departments, I can just step to the departments. And then in the department structure, I can see all the departments. That's depending on my user, of course. And if I just select one of these, I can see all the different items. I'm able here to change values. You can see that as well here. It is possible to enter values there. I can as well assign memberships or secondary memberships. Remember, there's a difference between a primary assignment, that means the user is in a department, and a secondary assignment, that means the user is assigned to additionally another department. And I can as well have a look at the entitlements assigned to that department and so on. As you can see, it is more or less the functionality you know from the manager. Not all of them, of course, because the manager keeps and remains our main data administration front end. But from a business perspective, this Data Explorer is pretty helpful, especially for people with a little bit more admin tasks to do than in the past. The same for identities, for example. If I step here to the identities, I can see here the identities, for example, my identity. I can activate, deactivate identities if I like to. I can see assigned application roles, system entitlements. I can see user accounts that specific person is able to work with. And of course, attestation cases if there are some assigned. The whole thing is pretty helpful and is known as Data Explorer underneath of Data Administration. And a new feature as well is the application governance. Application governance is the way to handle applications so that they can be part of reports and you get a better overview of what happens there. Honestly, this is not a feature which allows to admin target systems. That could be something, but this is not the purpose. Application governance was developed just to handle applications and to see from a privilege perspective and a user perspective what is assigned there. It is a governance feature. You can find that under data administration like before. You can as well look here at the applications. There is just one application in my very specific demo system. You can add more of them, of course. If you jump into that specific application, you can see a lot of details around that application. You can hit on that specific pen icon here and you will automatically get all the different properties of that specific application from the icon down to the owner, and other specifics are here what you can change. Websites, you can deal with the authentication method the application is working on. You can as well set risk levels if this is necessary. If you then back at the main screen here, you can have a look at the other tabs. There is the standard overview of the application with assigned service categories, with business roles, with owners and such. You can see the KPI if there is one of the application. You can see identities with access to the application and application entitlements if there are some. Everything it's meant more as something you can see in reports and in an overview. That means you can as well import such application easily from lists or where you like to get them from. Of course, it is possible to add applications here. And of course, because that is a rich feature, it is possible and necessary to talk about this application governance in its own specific video series. Always in the system there was the attestation and what you can do with attestation, but the reporting of attestation campaigns was a little bit odd. This is new again in the new Standard Web Portal in a way of that it is much more detailed. To see it, I step here to attestation, and there on attestation runs, and I see a list of different attestations happen and the runs. New there is on the very right hand side the detailed button, and if I just hit on the detail button, then I get a new detailed overview. It looks a little bit simple, but there is much more complexity and much more functionality underneath. To see that, for example, I can open the attestation details and I can see there just a graph that shows me everything about the attestation. Seeing that graph, I see especially here the difference between a denial attestation and of course an attestation which is cancelled. That was not possible in the past. Up to version 8.1 of the Identity Manager, denied attestation cases and attestation cases cancelled by the system was at the end the same. Not in 8.2 anymore. Here you can differ between both. That makes sense from an attestation perspective because denied attestation cases are something denied on a user decision in difference to attestation cases cancelled by the system, which was mainly, for example, cancelled if they was not decided by time. Additionally to this and the attestation prediction that you can see there, are the assigned attestators, as you can easily see there. In this specific case, there is no attestator assigned, which is pretty odd because then you can't run your attestation campaign. And you see as well the attestation cases, and oh wonder, all of them are denied. And the reason is of course, that for that specific attestation campaigns, no attesters was available. To show you the difference, I close just that overview, step to the overview in the first attestation run there. If I step to attesters, you can see the attesters which have to do the job. And if you go to attestation cases, you see them all pending because none of them are currently just decided. This is what in a demo system is pretty typical, but now I can start to do so, but only if I am an attester. I'm not, because I'm signed in as Herwig, and as you can see, the Herwig is not part of the story. With that, I think that attestation campaigns are much better seen in the future, and this new form will help the attestation owners, that means our CISOs, to see what happens with their attestation campaigns. Very well done from my perspective. As well, completely reviewed and just increased in functionality, it's my direct reports. You can see them here on the right lower. My direct reports show me all people I'm as a line manager are responsible for. For example, I can use that specific user. And if I step to that specific user, I get a pretty new overview that shows me everything around the user. As a line manager, I can change here, as you can see, much more fields like in the profile. Please be careful, some of these fields are available just in some of these tabs. For example, organizational information can be seen here. For example, I can as well permanently deactivate people in that specific thing, or location information can be seen there. And again, a lot of data, it's just changeable. The good message is you don't need again something like the manager. That means administrative tasks, like they are typical for business people, especially if they are line manager, can directly be done there. There is as well the capability to look at the assigned application roles of that specific member and the system entitlements. You can as well look at the user accounts that specific person has. You can as well look into the attestation cases if there are some for that specific person. And if I step back to details, you can as well download some reports about these people. That is then a PDF report, of course, that shows you nearly everything. Remember, such takes sometimes a while, but if the report returns, then you can see everything pretty detailed, what we saw in the front end before, just in a report that you can export or print out for your documentation. Once you want to go back, you can just hit the button and you are back in the Standard Web Portal, and we can have a look at the other functionalities. For example, you can assign a new manager. Yes, of course, that will then automatically lead to a decision process, but at the end there will then be another manager assignable. Last but not least, create passcodes exists for line managers as well. This is a capability to help users to reset their passwords or to let them sign in first time. Therefore, managers can create that passcode that gets then automatically transported to users depending on which process is implemented. And with this passcode, people can sign in the password reset portal, of course, and they can there change or set their password. This is the new capability just to manage my direct reports. Well done again from my side to our R&D people.